Good evening, Booktube. It's Tony here from Locks to Reads. Here with my freshly shaved, well, not freshly shaved, but recently freshly shaved face, to give you the full glory of my enormous head. I haven't been on here for a while. There's a couple of reasons for that. The first is I've been going through a reading slump, an unusually long one for me. There are reasons for that, which I will talk about later. And up until today, I'd only finished one book, which is The Black Archive number 74, A Christmas Carol by Jamie Beckwith and Leslie Grace McMurtry. I won't talk about this in too much detail here because it's a Doctor Who book and this is not a Doctor Who channel. I will possibly at some point set up a separate Doctor Who channel to talk about all the Doctor Who stuff that is in my head, which is a lot. Also, Leslie and Jamie are friends of mine, so you can take what follows with as much a pinch of salt as you want based on that. I like to think I would have reviewed this fairly regardless. I liked it and enjoyed it. But then I like the whole Black Archive series, which looks at individual Doctor Who stories, and each writer or writers can approach that Doctor Who story from whatever angle they like. They don't have a set structure. Some of them talk about the book in what I would call a traditional sort of production standpoint. Others, like this one, look at literary influences, the history of Christmas in England, and go on to talk about ethics and in the story, which is one of the reasons this is enjoyable, because I have a fascination with philosophy that is so far unsupported by my actual reading. But this actually did make me want to read up some more, to read some more philosophy, as well as being interesting about Doctor Who. So that's that one. I'm not sure how much interest that'll be to anybody that watches this, but I recommend the Black Archive series in general. I've got a load of them. I've read a load of them. They're almost always very good. And if you're a Doctor Who fan, I would recommend them. The other book I finished today, the second book of February, is Ian Fleming, The Complete Man by Nicholas Shakespeare, which I got from the lovely Acton Library. Although at the moment it's less lovely because it's undergoing some updates and therefore it's been shoved into a much smaller room. But hopefully the new improved version of the old library will be great. This is a chunky boy. It was published in 2023. This is the 2024 vintage version. It's about 704 pages of actual text and about 800 and odd pages, including index notes, references, acknowledgements, etc. I found it a really fascinating read. I know a little bit about Ian Fleming, but most of what I know is the basic on the grapevine. He was a bit of a cad. He was an alcoholic, smoked too much, blah blah blah, womanizer, blah blah blah. This does a good job of giving us the all of Ian Fleming. It's hard in some sections because there aren't sources for a lot, or the sources that are available are very broken up, especially on his work during World War II in naval intelligence. But it covers his whole life through to his death. It actually also has the final chapter also includes a little bit about his son Caspar, who died tragically very young, and it's an interesting story. Your perception of Ian Fleming is that he was a man. He got everything. He went to Eton. He had money. He was from a family with money. He had influence, wealth, but somehow it never really made him a happy man, or at least for long chunks of time. It wasn't helped by the fact that his mother was very pushy. His father died during World War One, fighting, and was one standard by which Fleming judged himself and was judged. His older brother, he was a second son. His older brother Peter was also a great success, both at Eton and going on. He was a writer first in World War II. He was involved in mission, in sort of back behind the scenes commando type missions, and again was another person who Fleming set his standards against. But there's a lot more in here about Fleming's life in general, the influences on him. Like he was obviously a smart man. He could speak French, German, and Russian fluently. He read a lot of literature that the way other people talk about him you wouldn't know he would have read. He had a fascinating life. So the Second World War kind of made him. I think if the Second World War hadn't happened and his job in in naval intelligence hadn't happened, then it's perfectly possible he would have ended his days as a wastrel, bankrupt con man, like Boris Johnson, but without the would like Boris Johnson basically. Actually, that's not very harsh on Ian Fleming. Boris Johnson is a tosspot. Ian Fleming, for all his faults, wasn't quite as horrible as Boris Johnson. It's I really if you want to know about Fleming and his work, I really recommend it. It's made me want to do another reread of. I read all the Bond novels back a few years ago, and this has made me want to reread them and read the and rewatch the films. But it's also made me want to read a number of other people who get mentions in this book as either influences or people around Fleming. The list is quite long, but yeah, it was a good book. It took me a while to read. Again, partly because of the reading slump, partly because of the size of the book. But yeah, that's what I've read so far in February. Let me just take a pause and talk about reading slumps. I have reading slumps occasionally. They don't usually last as long as this one has lasted. There's a couple of reasons why this one has been so deep. Partly, there's some general mental health issues where I'm finding it very difficult. I found it very difficult to concentrate. I was getting angry at everything, even the most petty little comment elsewhere, and therefore reading was just impossible. And I was doom scrolling on various forms of social media. I have in the last week stopped doing that, which has helped a lot. And as soon as I catch myself doing it, I stop. The other thing was I'd put too many books on my reading list. There was like 11 books on the books that I'd started. So I did what I often do in a reading slump situation. I picked one book and read it and finished it, which was the Nicholas Shakespeare Ian Fleming book. Now, normally what I do is I find out which book I am currently reading has the shortest number of pages left in it. Then I read that, or I go and read a book that I love that as a reread, just to get me back into the process of reading. But I sat down and went for Ian Fleming, read that, and I feel much. It was the sort of perfect book to break me out of a reading slump. I know now where I read next is a moot point, because a lot of what was on my list is long and hard, inverted commas, in the sense of not of being either a big chunky classic or a big chunky piece of non-fiction. I have three more books from the library to potentially read, and there's a couple of books that I'm halfway through. I might stick to non-fiction, as that seems to be working well. I think the possible pick next is Foot Sloggers by Peter Hart, an infantry battalion at war, 1939 to 1945, which again I got from the library. Peter Hart, I've read a couple of his books. He's a very good historian. And this seems to be the one that's grabbing my attention. Although I did say I was going to read Edith Wharton's The House of Mirth with Alyssa from at Nerdy Nurse Reads, but I'm not sure I'm mentally in the right place for that. The other thing that I am actually reading, I should mention this, my reading group is doing If on a Winter's Night a Traveller by Italo Calvino. I've read 2 chapters of this, and I have to say, if it carries on the way it's going, this is going to be a new favourite book of all time. I love the way it started, and I like the way it's going. It's sort of playing with what a book is and what the relationship between an author and a reader is, and it's very, very enjoyable and funny, surprisingly. So yeah, so I will be reading that. I'm reading this fairly slowly, because I'm trying to catch what he's doing, and also because it's my reading group. We all read at different paces, so I don't want to rush and finish it before everybody else does, which happens sometimes with the reading group. But there's a pile of things here potentially to read. I went to the library, as I said. There's a Philip K. Dick book that I've never read called The Transformation of Timothy Archer, which was the only fiction book I got out of the library. So this is a potential as well. But I think I'll read that after I finished Calvino. I'm not sure I can cope with Calvino and Philip K. Dick at the same time. I think that might be a bit too much for my brain. And the other book I got from the library, again non-fiction, is Bury the Chains, The British Struggle to Abolish Slavery by Adam Hochschild. I've started this a couple of times and not finished it, but I'm determined to read it because I'm interested to see. It's a subject that interests me. So yes, there's a number of other started books, but I'm not going to worry about those for the moment. But yes, so this is an update from middle-ish February, a month that has turned out to be pretty terrible in many respects. I don't really want to talk about things going on in my life. It's not the top place for this, and if I don't talk to my friends and family about it, I don't think I should talk to random strangers on the internet about it. But reading hasn't been the comfort it normally is, until today, really, or the last couple of days. Actually, reading the Ian Fleming book really got me back on the straight and narrow. So yeah, so hopefully there'll be another update sooner than the last one. And have a good day. Speak to you soon. Bye bye, YouTube.